Welcome in, I'm Artris, and yes, I am back on the cope train. I am testing out Vivi once again. It seems like every set, I always try to mess around with a couple of leaders to see if there's any improvements or any way to make them work. And one of those is Vivi, one of those is Rebecca, maybe a Rebecca video down the road, but for now we're going to touch on Vivi and see how Vivi changes with some of the new additions from OP09 and overall how the deck plays. But before we go into the changes and the deck list overall, please make sure to drop a like and a sub. It helps out the channel so much. Thank you so much for all the support. Additionally, if you'd like to talk about the One Piece card game outside of the YouTube comments, make sure to join the Discord. The link for that is in the description below. As a quick reminder, Vivi is a leader from OP04 that cannot attack in the colors of red and blue. However, because Vivi can't attack, she has 5 life. And the second part of that ability is activate main once per turn, pay 2 Dawn, draw 1 card, and then up to one of your characters gains Rush during this turn. That being said, I would like to say that there's a lot of different builds of Vivi out there. I think that this build is more of a late game control build, whereas I've definitely seen a lot more of the aggro variants with the 7 Warlord package, or even some of the chopper support to have more of a balanced early to mid game. However, this deck doesn't play quite like that. Your early to mid game, for me, is all about drawing cards, and then the late game, you're dropping bombs that your opponent has a hard time answering. Starting off though, we have 4 Sanji. This is a 2k counter. However, this is a great card to play down sometimes if you'd like to put in some pressure early. It's activate main once per turn. You may add 1 card from your life area to your hand, and then this character gains plus 2,000 power during this turn. Then give this character up to 2 rested Dawn cards. So on your 4 Dawn turn, you can play down Sanji, use your leader ability to give it Rush, then use the Sanji ability to give it 2 rested Dawn, and also take a life, so you get to draw a card basically, and it's a 7k body that swings at anything on the field, which is very nice. So your opponent will likely want to swing into that instead of swinging into you the following turn. I'm running 4 Marco. This is a 5 cost 6,000 power body. It says on play and your turn, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 power or less. So very nice to be able to pick off some smaller bodies that might be a nuisance for you. And the other thing here, it says on KO, you may trash 1 event card from your hand and then play this character from the trash as rested. We are running a lot of events here, so you have a lot of fodder for Marco to be able to be revived without having to worry about discarding counters from your hand. I'm running 2 Super Spot Build Duck Squad. This is a 2k counter specifically for Vivi. It says when attacking, give up to one of your active leaders minus 5,000 power during this turn, and then return this card to your hand at the end of your turn. This is not going to hit the field nearly as much as like maybe a Sanji. However, this card is good for picking off smaller bodies in the early game. I'm running 2 KO Shanks. This is very powerful against decks like Bonnie or decks like Enel. Being able to just answer their biggest top end is very, very nice. Of course, this doesn't hit the 9 cost Shanks. That I guess is technically their biggest top end in Bonnie. But regardless, Shanks does answer a lot of things in this meta. And once it hits the field, it's really hard for the opponent to remove. And it's going to be answering a body every turn thereafter, or just pushing for life, which is also very nice. I'm running 4 Shariah. This is a 3 cost 4,000 power blocker, but it does have a nice little effect here that says when attacking and when blocking, this character's base power becomes the same as the power of your opponent's leader until the start of your next turn. So this will be able to block any leader swing for just the cost of 1k counter. You just block it, copy the leader's power, and then pitch a 1k and call it a day. You can also use this to swing in on the same turn. If you're on 5 Dawn, you can play this down, give it Rush, and then swing 5,000 at something. Or if you're going against like a Whitebeard or a Red Purple Luffy, you can swing 6,000. An addition that I added in last set, but I don't know if I covered Vivi last set, is Silver's Rayleigh. So I'm running 4 of here. It's an 8,000 power, 8 cost body that says on play, choose up to 2 of your opponent's characters until the end of your opponent's next turn. Give 1 character minus 3,000 power and the other minus 2,000 power. After this, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a power of 3,000 or lower. There's a couple things here that Rayleigh is really good at. 1, getting rid of mid-range bodies, so going against Doflamingo, this is a great card to see. 2, if you're going against decks that go a little bit more tall, this will help shrink those units down to be able to counter out of those attacks that are coming at you the following turn, because the debuff sticks around for an entire turn, which is very useful. And then lastly, of course, Rayleigh on 10 Dawn, once you do the effect here, you can give Rayleigh Rush and have it swing into a body, and it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to trade into things. Of course, the newest addition from OP09 is the 10 cost Rush Shanks, and so I want to put 4 of these in the deck because this is one of Red's strongest cards in general. I think that this card is a lot stronger than maybe a Kaido, which I was running in previous sets, either the bounce or the draw Kaido. The Shanks gets immediate value. It shrinks down your opponent's characters, so it makes it easier for you to defend yourself, and it is likely going to be trading into something or just pressuring face, depending on the situation, but it is very flexible in that regard. The downside here, of course, it is 10 Dawn, so you are unable to use your leader ability and draw a card. You can also not use your 1-cost counter events if you do play Shanks down, so you have to be very aware of that. However, the immediate value that you get from the Shanks, I think, makes it much worth playing. Also from OP09, one of the other strongest red cards to come out into the red card pool for a while is Ben Beckman. This is a 7-cost, 7,000 power body. On play, trash up to one of your opponent's characters with a power of 6,000 or less. This, for me, replaced Borsellino, the 7-cost, 8,000 power blue character that bottom decked a 4-cost. I felt like the Borsellino card was pretty solid overall. However, the biggest key here is that Ben Beckman has a counter, whereas Borsellino did not. So there are times in previous sets where if I drew into a Borsellino and I didn't have anything to bottom deck it with, it felt pretty bad overall. And so I feel like this card is a slight improvement because of that. Even though you don't have the 8,000 power to swing with, you do have a counter to be able to survive longer with, and it's essentially the same effect. Bottom decking and trashing are very good at the end of the day. I feel like bottom decking is a little bit better. However, it acts as the same thing. Next, I'm running 2 Gion. This is in case you do go against a Nami. This card will win you that matchup. That and also Pudding. Gion just says your turn, once per turn, when your opponent activates an event, your opponent places 1 card from their hand at the bottom of their deck. So anytime a Nami counter events, then they have to also put something at the bottom of their deck while also, countering out. So that's very annoying for Nami to deal with, and the reason why, actually the sole reason why this is pretty much in here. And then I just mentioned Pudding. Pudding, of course, is the bane of all Whitebeard players. This is a 4-cost, 4,000 power body. On play, your opponent returns all of their hand cards to their deck and shuffles their deck. Then your opponent draws 5 cards. So it will just reset your opponent's hand. Sometimes when you're playing as Vivi, your opponent will start to amass a pretty big hand size. And even in the late game, when you are throwing down these big bodies and they're swinging in, they will be connecting. And so your opponent might have like 9, 10 cards in hand at some point in the game. And having a Pudding, at least in the deck, to know that you can get it and reset their hand pretty easily is very nice to have. I don't always like to play it, but that's why I have it at 2 of, because it is situational against some decks. Then I'm running 3 Boa Hancock, a 6-cost, 8,000 power body that says on play up to one of your opponent's characters other than Monkey D. Luffy cannot attack into the end of your next turn. Then place up to 1 cost 1 or less character on the bottom of its owner's deck. So this is great because on your 8 Dawn turn, you can play down this Boa Hancock, freeze something on your opponent's side of the field, and then if they have a searcher or a very small chump blocker, you can bottom deck that and then give this rush and swing in for 8. 8 is a really strong number overall. Obviously, 7 is the magic number, but 8 just feels a lot better because that means they're going to have to give you 2 2Ks for the most part, depending on the leader, of course. But regardless, being able to free something is very powerful, and then also being able to swing with this unit the same turn is also very nice. And then for all the events we have, which we do have quite a lot here, I'm running 4 Rad Beam, so a plus 4,000 power if you are at 2 life or less. The trigger sometimes comes up. Then I'm running 4 Bad Manners Kit Course, a 0-cost event that you can pitch a card from hand and then give your leader or character plus 3,000 power. We're running a lot of bricks, as you can see, especially if you're tapping out to play like a Shanks, then you need to have these 0-cost events to at least guarantee that you can stay alive for the most part, because ideally you establish your Shanks down and then afterwards you keep your like Rad Beam or your Happiness Punches to be able to survive really big attacks in the late game. But the Bad Manners Kit Course are really important to have when you are playing those Shanks down on your 10 Dawn turn. The other 1-cost event that I'm running is the Happiness Punch counter event. Give up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters minus 2,000 power. Then if your leader is active, give up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters minus 1,000 power for the turn. This is very good because in the early game, you will have an opponent maybe swing like 6 with their lead and maybe 5 with the character. You can stop those 2 attacks with this 1 counter event by minus 2,000 to the 6 and then minus 1,000 to the 5. And so that I think is great value overall. Even in the late game, just being able to minus 3 to something is also very strong. And this also applies to things that can restand. So if you do minus 3 to something, it keeps that minus 3 for the rest of that turn. For instance, if you're going against like a Foxy, where they can restand their leader or character and swing again, they keep that debuff for the second swing. Next, I'm running 2 Gum Gum Rains, a 0-cost event in blue. I felt like only 4 0-cost events was not enough, but obviously 8 feels like too much. And so I felt like 6 would be a good sweet spot to be able to just guarantee that I can survive without having to worry about leaving any Dawn up. Like I said, the turns where you're playing Shanks are very important, and so having the 0-cost events in your hand for those turns to at least protect yourself the best you can, I think is ultimately the reason why I have these at 6. Then I'm running 3 Gravity Blade. This is a 7-cost event that bottom decks 2 cost 6 or less characters in any order at the bottom of the deck, and then the trigger is place 1 cost 5 or less character on the bottom of its owner's deck. Both are great. If you get the trigger, awesome. If you can play it outright, that's also really good too. And I think that if I was running 4, I'd probably feel like it's too many. 2 feels like not enough. But sometimes 3 can be a little bit problematic. This is going to be a great answer to a lot of things that maybe Doflamingo throws down. If you're going against maybe a Teach and they do play out like Burgess, there's not really a way to get rid of the Burgess other than Gravity Blade, so that's very nice to have as well. And otherwise, if you do come into like the late game situations where this is not really relevant anymore, you can always pitch it to any of the 0-cost events, or if Marco's on the field, you can pitch it to Marco to keep Marco alive. So Gravity Blade is a very nice card to have within this deck. Overall, I don't know if this leader is very strong or not. I feel like every set, I feel like Vivi has potential to really pop off, but sometimes there's games where it just feels really out of your control. Obviously, when you're not doing a lot for the first couple of turns of the game other than drawing, that can be a problem, but you're, accruing a big hand size. And so by the time you get to the end game, you will have probably 11 or 12 cards in hand, plus being able to play out big bodies that your opponent will likely not be able to answer, will probably get you across that finish line more often than not. It does struggle against decks that go wide very fast. So obviously in a meta where Doflamingo is the best deck in the format, Vivi might not be the best choice, but if you're looking for something a little bit more fun and can handle all of the go tall decks, I feel like Vivi is ultimately a good choice. The other thing I did want to mention here is that I feel like Red Rock is probably a good choice for Vivi right now because of how many tall bodies are in the game, and some of them you just can't answer, right? Shanks can only answer 10,000 cost or lower, so that means if like Blackbeard throws his blocker down, then that's going to be a problem, and sometimes having a Red Rock is nice. So I would recommend, if you can, try to find room for Red Rock. For right now, I feel like Gravity Blade's a better choice for me, but I do want to try to put in Red Rock and see if it works. With that being said, let's take it into the sim and see how it does. All right, Shanks is a matchup I feel pretty comfortable with, mostly because they are only playing one thing a turn, so they won't really overwhelm me. Maybe late game it can be a problem if they are dropping down too many rush Shanks and I don't have a lot of big bodies established myself. We're going to mulligan the hand because I really want to see at least 1 or 2 big pieces in my opening hand. I don't want to have to rely on drawing into them. Unfortunately, the only big piece we get here is Silver Israeli. Although it is good, it's not the best thing we want to see. So the other thing here is they went second, which we usually want to go second so we can get our leader ability off immediately. And we just use our leader ability on our 3-Dawn turn to just draw and pass the turn. They have a Sanji on the field, which they might want to start using to be able to swing into me because this will allow them to draw cards from their life. They know that I'm not going to be swinging into them for a couple of turns at least. Maybe they just don't want to take life. So here we're just going to use the Happiness Punch to give this a -2/-1. So we stop 2 attacks with 1 Dawn, which is very nice here. Otherwise, for me, I don't know if they had anything else to play this turn, but if it was me as the Shanks, I would try to find something else to play and then use the Shanks, or the Sanji ability rather, to swing in. But here, I have a Sanji of my own, and I'm going to use the ability because I want to draw a card, and then I want to get this Sanji off the field. This is going to be a very annoying card for me to have to deal with if they do decide to start using it to draw life. Of course, they let it go. 8-3 is not worth saving, I don't think. Here, they might just want to swing 5 into the Sanji and get it off the field. And if they do, I think it might be worth protecting it, to be quite honest here. But 9-3 is not going to work. So this next turn, I feel comfortable dropping down a Marco and getting rid of the Sanji and then swinging in with the Marco. Giving it rush, of course. We draw a Shariah off of the leader ability. And now we are in a little bit of an establishing position where we have a body to be able to swing at the Shanks. Obviously, we can't swing with our leader ability, but that doesn't quite matter. We are going to start putting out big bodies here on after to be able to keep pressuring the Shanks the best we can. The other option that turn could have played a Boa Hancock, and that Boa Hancock would have been able to at least freeze the Sanji and then bottom the Uta, but that Uta is not really a threat, so I don't think that's really worth doing that turn. The Hancock might come into play if they play something bigger, of course. They play out a Rayleigh, KO the Marco. Of course, we can revive it with the Gravity Blade, which we're likely not going to be using in this matchup anyway, because at the point of 8 Dawn or above, they're going to be playing big bodies every turn. And so getting rid of the Gravity Blade to bring Marco back is really nice, because once we bring Marco back, the debuff from Rayleigh is now gone. And so we can actually swing in pretty heavy here. I think we want to swing 7, and it might be worth playing out the Rayleigh to shrink out the other Rayleigh and then KO the Uta, but we could also just freeze the Rayleigh and swing in with Boa, drawing a card. That's probably the better thing here, just to apply extra pressure, and we draw into a 10 cost KO Shanks, which that's very nice here because we can, you know, KO their Rayleigh. We do know they have one in hand from their Uta search for turn 1, and so we probably are going to expect this Boa Hancock to be KO this turn. They might swing 5. We can counter out of the 5. Yep, as I mentioned, it's fine. We can also take this, but I think countering out at this point is probably a little bit easier because they will probably likely throw out a lot of 10 cost here. So let's swing 6, just have them use their leader ability and give us a 1k, and we will KO the Rayleigh so that we have a 10 cost of our own. We could have played our Rush Shanks as well, but I think it's better to get rid of as many bodies on their side of the field as possible. And this turn, I don't know what I would do if I was Shanks. I might swing into the Marco to try to get rid of it so that I don't have as much pressure into them the next turn. But they also have a lot of cards in hand. Then again, Shanks runs a lot of bricks as well. So who knows what they have. But I think we're looking pretty good. We have a lot of 0 cost events, so we're pretty comfortable tapping out here, dropping a 10 cost Rush Shanks of our own. They, of course, play a 10 cost Rush Shanks. And where are they going to give this attack to? Okay, so we can actually just eat this attack with the Marco ability. I'll probably just get rid of maybe the Rad Beam, because we're not going to use it the next turn anyway, because we're going to be playing the 10 cost Shanks. And if they go 5-5 here, we'll just give them a 1k, and then basically we just ate up. If you look at it, if they swing with their other 10 cost Shanks, then, oh, they're swinging life. Okay, we're just going to take this one. I was going to say, if they swing at this Marco again, then we just ate up 3 attacks for only 2 cards, which is really great value. Of course, they're going to use their leader ability here, swinging 5-5. We'll swing 11-5. We're just pushing lethal if we can. I think that's important here, to push as hard as we can, because we want to get them to 0 and make them go for game if they have to. And we have to think about the next turn. What is the worst that they can do? They can probably play like a Goldie Roger and swing in. So they could go like 11, 11, 12, and then 5. But they do also have a Rush Shanks. That's also pretty bad for us because, you know, 11, 11, 11, 5 is going to be difficult. So we're going to take at least 2 of the 11s, counter out of the 5, and then hopefully have enough counter, which it looks like we do with all the 0 cost events here, to be able to survive. So we'll go 0 cost event, pitching out. Doesn't really matter, to be quite honest. We'll keep 1 10 cost Shanks. Actually, yeah, 1 10 cost Shanks is fine because we might want to use it to go for lethal here, but obviously just stacking all on one of the Shanks here is probably our best bet. So go ahead and swing 20-5. Maybe they have enough counter. I doubt they will. They had a Goldie Roger the next turn coming up, but man, they were bricked up. They only had 4k counter in hand, and I guess that's sometimes the way that it goes with Shanks. Purple Luffy is definitely an interesting deck for us to face. If they have a perfect curve, it will be likely impossible for us to be able to combat them, but if they do have a slower start, then we do have a chance here. Our hand was really good though, because we have Boa, we have a Ben Beckman, and then we drew into a 10 cost Shanks. So I think that we have a pretty solid hand. We just have to hope that they don't carry the game away too heavy from the start. So we also have a pudding as well if they decide to go really ham with the life and card draw. But they go 7 at face, which means a slow start for them at least. They only had a Nico Robin to play. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes Purple Luffy just doesn't see their curve to start off with. And that means we have a chance, which is very nice for us, because here we have a couple of options. If they decide to play down something like a Luffy Taro, we should be able to freeze it with the Boa Hancock, because Luffy Taro is not called Monkey D. Luffy, and so it can be frozen by Boa Hancock. We also have a Ben Beckman to be able to freeze or trash something rather, but they have a Sanji. So we're going to go ahead and just counter out of this one, because if we can counter out of this, it means we stopped 2 attacks with only 1 2k counter, which is really good for us here. And so we'll freeze the Sanji. We're not going to give Boa Hancock rush because we don't have enough Dawn for that, but I think that's fine to be able to stop this Sanji attack this next turn. And so here, ideally for them, they could throw down a Luffy Taro into another body. They can also throw down a bigger body, of course, depending on what they drew, but it seems like their opening hand and what they've drawn into hasn't been beneficial for their game plan overall. Of course, Sanji's not a bad card for them to have. It was able to clear the only really attacker that we had, which I guess is good value for them, but also the thing is, like, when they load up Dawn on their leader and swing like that, it's not really a great play. Here, just a kid, not very strong. I feel like what would be good here could be playing a Ben Beckman down, but I want to see what they do. I want to see if they counter out of this or if they block. Because if they block this with the Nico Robin, then I can go Ben Beckman. But also, to be honest, I'm not really like worried about the Nico Robin either. We could have Gravity Bladed that turn, but I think getting a body on the field is probably more important. So having a 7k and an 8k is better than having just an 8k and then getting rid of 2 blockers on their side. We also have the threat of putting at any time because they're sitting at 9 cards in hand. So we can counter out with 1. We'll likely take this next one and then hope that they don't have a 10 cost rush or 9 cost rush Luffy. Instead, they have the Linlin, which actually is a really good card here, being able to answer my Boa Hancock. But I think this next turn, we're just going to go ahead and just swing 7 at face, see what they do. If they block, awesome. If they don't, then we'll just go 12 at face and then force them to block with the Nico Robin. Either way, I feel like it makes more sense going 7 to 5 rather than 7 to 7. And here I feel like we can just go Shanks into the Sanji and clear the Sanji out. And we have a Silver's Rayleigh this next turn for if they, start putting out a lot of bodies, we can maybe answer them pretty easily. And then also swing into the Linlin with our giant 10 cost rush Shanks. This card is so powerful in this deck. Being able to reduce your opponent's characters is great. Easier for us to counter out with. We'll take the 8, of course. We'll counter out of the leader swing with a 0 cost event and a Gravity Blade because we're not going to be using it, at least in the foreseeable future. They'll only, like I said, play on 1 card. So they play out the Luffy Taro into Zoro Juro, which came a little bit late, admittedly, but I guess better late than never. This does worry me slightly because here the Luffy Taro is an annoying swinger. We're going to play Rayleigh first, and we're going to -3 to the Linlin and then -2 to the Zoro Juro, KOing the Zoro Juro. I'll swing 7 into 5 and see what they do here. If they give me a counter, then I'll likely... Well, I was going to say I was going to likely give Rayleigh rush and swing in, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just so we can have some momentum here. This might be a Gum Gum Giant, because 8 to 5 is a pretty easy one, but no, maybe just 2 2Ks. That's also fine as well. We'll go 12 to 5, and that was going to connect pretty easily. We drew into another Silver's Rayleigh, so this next turn we can just do the same thing again, clear board if they decide to go wide, and then trade into things pretty easily. I imagine that they have a Gum Gum Giant at this point in the game, and so that will be a little bit harder for us to try to clear some of the things on the board with like the Ben Beckman or the Rayleigh. Obviously the Shanks will likely get you there, but we have to be very aware that that could be a thing. So they swing 5 at lead, easy counter out. If they decide to swing 7 here, we could do another Bad Manners kick course into a Gravity Blade, or pitching the Gravity Blade rather. They're going to go 9. Okay, so 9 to 7. We are protecting our units easily. I want to make sure that these units stay alive because these are the reasons why we're going to stay in the game. If they go for my life, I'm a little bit less worried about that, but of course I'm going to always protect the Ben Beckman when I can. So here they have another Luffy Taro into an Onami, which Onami is fine because it's a good blocker, good chump blocker, but we can just play a Rayleigh down. And I think it's actually worth shrinking the standing Luffy Taro by 3 and then KOing the Nami. Although, here's a misplay that I just made. I could have -2 to the Luffy Taro that was resting and then KO the Onami for free. But I clicked too fast there. YouTuber brain. We'll go 12 into 7. Just for that mistake. And then we'll go 7 into 5 and then 8 into 5 and then give our other Rayleigh rush. I guess it didn't matter because even though they had, looks like probably counter to survive this turn, they didn't really have any pressure the following turn to be able to do much to me. So yeah, the Rayleighs put in work, but obviously having that 10 cost Shanks down on curve is very important. Ooh, Enel. This is actually one of my favorite matchups to go against as Vivi, and this is a perfect hand for the example of why I like going against Enel as Vivi. You're able to play out some 10 drops, and if you can swarm the board with your 10 drops, then there's not much Enel can do. Obviously, they have Rygo, but the thing is, we're not swinging into them, and so they're going to likely be at 4 life at the time of when these Shanks come down. Of course, going second is really good for us as well. So we always want to choose to go second. Drawing that card from turn 1 is very important for us. So you basically draw 2 on your turn 1 is very nice. So we're going to take this 8. Obviously, I'm not going to counter out of that. Typically, I will take the first 2 hits against Enel unless, of course, they give me a reason to not. Like if they swing like a 5 or 6 here, I think it's worth just countering out. But sometimes Enel will just load up for the first 2 turns and swing like 8, swing 10. And I'm usually okay with that. So 6 and Frankie's fine. We'll play out a Boa Hancock, freeze the Frankie. And we won't give it rush because we can't. And it's not worth giving rush and swinging into Enel anyway. Unless, of course, we have a pudding in hand. It might be worth it. But I think it's fine to just like starve them as much as possible. And I guess starving isn't the correct term because we're not swinging into any units. Usually starving will require you to swing into a unit so they counter out and give you cards out of hand. But anyway, this turn they are at 7 Dawn, so they don't have too much going on. They might be able to swing 5 and play out a 7-cost Rush Enel, but not a lot of lists are playing Enel anyway, the 7-cost Rush Enel. So they swing 7 and they might play out like a Luffy or a Gadatsu or a Nami, but we're not really worried about any of those units, to be quite honest. And they just put all 5 on. Maybe they forgot that the Frankie can't attack, or maybe they just didn't care. We will freeze it again with the Boa Hancock, and we'll give Hancock rush, but we're not going to swing in. We're just going to keep these Hancocks standing upright. Although at this point in the game, on 9 Dawn, they could play out a Yamato and just KO the Hancock for free. They can also Katakuri and put it at the bottom or top of life. Katakuri is their poison of choice. Swinging 6, we'll take that one because if they give us life, we'll take the life. And man, what a life to get. We got a 10-cost KO Shanks, and we have 2 more Rush Shanks as well. It's looking really good. It's looking really good. So this turn, they might swing in big here. I'm not quite sure what their plan is. If I were them, I'd be looking to play out maybe a Yamato. And if they play out a Yamato, then I can just play out my 10-cost KO Shanks. They might also have a 10-cost Ace, which they don't anymore because they're swinging 6. So we'll counter out of that one. Because either way, if we take the hit, then we're going to be at 6 life between the 2 of us, and they'll be able to KO the Hancock off the Yamato effect anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And also, I don't want to go down too low in life. Something to remember against Enel is that they can pressure you, right? A lot of Enels will swing in, they'll starve you rather, and so you're comfortable like not really going too far down in life. But if Enel has like the fear of God in him, he will start realizing soon that he probably should start swinging and presenting lethal to us and pressuring us. This banish could be good. Okay, so 6 banish, not necessarily the scariest thing in the world here. We'll go ahead and counter out of that with 2 1Ks. That's the only problem is we don't have any 2Ks. So I guess that is where it can get a little bit scary, but we do have the counter to be able to get out of that. They followed up with the 7-cost Rush now, so they do have it. We'll take this one because I don't want to give them 2 more 1Ks. But this will give us something to attack into this next turn. They might want to use the Enel ability to trash a life to keep it on the field. Thinking about it, I might do it. I probably would do it, to be quite honest. It's like a bounce board for these 2 attacks that are coming at them. Might be worth it for them, although maybe they want the focus back on their life. Who knows? So because they used it, we're going to play out our other rush unit and shrink it down even further and swing into it. Of course, they might be holding onto Rygo, but it's going to be very difficult for them to use it at 3 life. If I'm a psycho, if I'm feeling crazy, I'll use it. But I think the game is starting to get a little bit out of their control at this point because of the fact that we have 3 10-cost units. And we're about to play a 4th one. That is absolutely devastating for them. So, yeah, who knows? who knows what their options are this turn. It looks like they're going to start pressuring, although, to be fair, 6 is not the number for it. It is the number against me right now because I only have 1Ks, but in general, 6 is not the answer. So we'll see what they do, though. We'll give them 2 1Ks, and they might play out an ace, a 10-cost ace if they have it, and just heal up to 4. They don't. They're going to go 2 and give themselves banish again. Okay, this is really awkward, but we do have a 0-cost event, so we're going to use it with the gravity blade, just pitching that away because I don't feel like we're going to be using that anytime soon. And then what do they have for 6? They don't have much on 6, to be quite honest. Okay, so they just play out a Luffy, maybe just establishing a body. They could have played a Raigo, I suppose, if they had it, but I don't think it's worth it. So we're going to swing the Shanks into the Katakuri and play one more 10-cost Shanks here. So now everything on their side of the field is minus by 3,000 power. So they have to put a lot of Dawn on everything here. Well, their Onamis are at 0 power right now. The Luffy is at 3. The Frankie's at 2. So if they want to try to pressure me, they're going to have to put a lot of Dawn on things. Which, to be quite honest, if I were the Enel, I might just start stacking a lot of Dawn on my leader and pressuring face because of the fact that I'm only at 2 life and they're sitting at, well, I guess sitting at 1 now. I guess they're feeling really crazy because they just Raigo'd one of my 10-cost Rush Shanks. They're down to 1 life, 5 cards in hand, and I have 3 big bodies coming at them this next turn that I don't think they're going to be able to counter out of unless they get lucky triggers here, which is really crazy. So I think the writing was on the wall there. They definitely saw it. And oh my God, speak of lucky triggers, the last life was a 0-cost event into a beige. So that would have stopped, that actually would have stopped them from getting lethal this next turn, which is crazy. The next life after that would have been a Raigo. Oh my God. That is insane. I swear, Enels always have 0-cost event as their last life. All right, and finally, we're going against Blackbeard here. We're going to choose to go second, and typically, I feel pretty comfortable in this matchup. It just depends on the draw and obviously how they draw as well. But I think our opening hand was okay enough to keep because we do have enough defensive tools for late. And we also have a Gravity Blade to answer their Burgess if they do get one. However, they have one of the best starts that they can see. Double the feet into a leader that cannot attack is extremely annoying here. So we're going to just counter out of this Gion. We're going to play out the Sanji to be able to give it rush. And then we're going to use the Sanji ability to draw a card. The reason I threw out the Gion is because I knew I was going to play out the Sanji this next turn, seeing it as they had Lafittes on the field. Here, I feel like it might be worth to protect the Sanji if they just swing 5 at it, because we need to be able to answer the Lafitte. They do get a Burgess with 4 Dawn here. If we let the Sanji go, they might establish a Burgess. So I think it might be worth to counter out with, give them the Shiraya, because I don't think the Shiraya really is too strong in this matchup anyway. I think it's okay, but it's just like too easy to KO. They just go ahead and finger gun the Sanji. That is quite the move there. Of course, I think they just wanted to get the Sanji off the field and protect the Lafitte, but we do draw into a Sanji of our own. We'll go ahead and use the ability again and get rid of that last Lafitte. Of course, if they decide to swing into the Sanji here, I think we just let it go because it did its job, but they probably have a Dock Q, right? Yeah, they got one off of the Lafitte. So they go Tashigi, Dock Q, KO the Sanji, play out the Full of Lead or Hachinosu, or Hachinosu, Nosu, something like that. Full of lead. That's the English translation here. They go 6, and we will counter out of this one because we don't want to go down to 2 life. This, I guess, early. I don't know. It's kind of mid-game, but we'll give them the Happiness Punch while we are able to at least have the Dawn up, because I knew I was just going to draw into the 10-cost Shanks there. It was the Conqueror's Hockey, of course, or I guess the Observation Future Hockey. So we're going to go ahead and give this Hancock rush, swing into the Tashigi, get off the field. I feel like the Dock Q isn't that huge of a threat. It is one of the few units that can KO in Blackbeard's arsenal, but I don't want them to have the Tashigi as like a swinger as well. So we're going to go ahead and just get rid of it, and then also protect the Hancock on the following turn. They play out a Burgess, of course, that the one that we saw that off of the Lafitte early game. I think it was like turn 2 or 3 for them. But this is perfect for us because we can just Gravity Blade, get rid of both of those units, and then draw and then pass the turn here. This might be a 10-cost Teach if they have it. Looks like they do not have it. Instead, they have a Van Augur to -3 to our Hancock, and then KO with another Finger Gun. I guess it's fine for us. Let's go ahead and counter out of this one while we can. I think I want to go ahead and establish the 10-cost Shanks. I think that's better than the Rayleigh here. Even though like we would be able to draw with the Rayleigh, I think that just getting a 10 cost Shanks on the field is just way more important overall. They still don't have a 10 cost Teach of their own, which is very interesting. They just decide to play another Burgess and pass, or I guess swing 11 and then pass. The 10 cost KO Shanks is not necessarily great here. So I'm not really happy to see that. We will play out this Bow Hancock, freeze the Burgess, give it rush and swing in, and then swing in with the Shanks. Start to pressure them a little bit, although this could give them the 10 cost from life if they had it there. And speak of the devil, look who it is. This Teach is quite annoying, of course. It freezes our Shanks, and now our leader can swing on the defense, right? No, that'd be cool if it was nullify for an entire turn, so then like Vivi could swing in. That'd be pretty sick. Swing 8 into 5. They use their leader, or sorry, they use their Teach. But what's really nice here about Vivi is that Vivi has the ability to give rush to all of their units. And so that's awesome because like Teach hates rush. Teach definitely struggles against any rush units because it just doesn't account for what could be coming to them. That's why decks like Sanji, Red Sanji are really good against Teach because it just keeps bringing out bodies that can swing in the same turn. But here they play out Ice Age, Dock Q, get rid of the Hancock. Pretty good usage of what they have in hand. And they are probably going to load up on this Burgess, swing 12 into 8. I think we have to let the Rayleigh go. And this puts us in a really uncomfortable position because they're swinging 8 at us. We're going to go ahead and use a 0 cost event and counter out with a Sanji to stay at 2 life, because if we go down to 1, we are definitely in danger of dying the next turn. And here I want to get this Burgess off the field. I could swing 12 into it, but they might block with their Teach and then give us a 2k if they have it in hand, which they might. So I think it's safer to just go 14 at the Teach and then just establish the Rayleigh and not give it rush, just so that we have this body on the field here. So I think that's pretty important overall. This turn, they play out another Burgess, and then I don't know what they're... Oh, gosh, they're just loading all up on this. We have to protect this by all means whatsoever. I think we have to. So we have a bunch of 0 cost events to save it, and we will take this 5. Pudding isn't bad if they decide to use their leader ability here, because then we can give it rush and potentially go for lethal if they use their leader ability. And they do. Oh, yes. This is amazing. Now we can play this Pudding down, give it rush, and then put 3 on it, guarantee lethal because they have 1 card in hand, so they can't counter out of a 7. Then they'll have 2 cards in hand. They won't be able to counter out of a 9 from Rayleigh, and then Shanks will go in for guaranteed lethal at that point. They got really greedy with their blocker there. I think if, obviously, 17 and 12 is probably really hard for most people to counter out of, and they're not going to expect all the 0 cost events, but that's why I run so many of them, because in those situations, you know, they don't expect it, and you can actually protect your units pretty easily. And because of that greed, we were able to turn it around and win with the Pudding, ironically enough. So as I said, there's different ways to build this leader, of course. I think that the way that I've built it so far, I really just enjoy having more top end and playing kind of a little bit more of a control variant of it. Granted, this isn't the best version of this. I think that there's probably some other things you could add in. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I really want to find room for a Red Rock, because there are some situations where just having a Red Rock is very beneficial. Being able to answer some huge bodies that you normally won't be able to, I think is probably important in this meta where a lot of things do go tall. I think in the matchups where things go wide, Gravity Blade is really strong, but I definitely want to slot in a couple of Red Rocks. I might want to replace a couple of like the Rad Beams for it, maybe replace a Rad Beam or 2, because Rad Beam is very situational towards the end game, and having a lot of Rad Beams in the early game isn't necessarily going to help you out very much. So that's maybe a change you could make. Of course, like I said, there's also variations where you have Animal Package, you have the Warlord Package to have more of an early to mid game presence. But I feel like this version's not so bad after all. We were able to take some games off of some meta leaders, even though there are some misplays here and there. I think it happens to everybody, but I think that overall the strength of the deck is still apparent regardless of that. So anyways, that about does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next one.